This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company. For more information and links to all our great podcasts, visit hartmanmedia.com.
Welcome to The Commercial Investing Show, where we analyze, explain, and exploit the opportunities presented in today's commercial property marketplace. If you're interested in apartments, mobile home parks, self-storage facilities, and other income property, you've come to the right place. We'll explore what's hot and what's not in markets nationwide in the relentless pursuit of return on investment. Here's your host, Jason Hartman.
It's my pleasure to welcome Garrett Gunderson. He is founder and chief wealth architect of The Wealth Factory. He's a New York Times best-selling author of Killing Sacred Cows, Overcoming the Financial Myths That Are Destroying Your Prosperity, and What Would the Rockefellers Do? How the Wealthy Get and Stay That Way. And you can too. Garrett, welcome. How are you?
Good, Jason. Good to be with you, man.
Yeah,
it was fun hanging out a year ago in Austin, speaking at the same event as you, and so look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, that was a good time. I really enjoyed what you had to say when we were sharing the stage there at our friend Ryan Moran's event. Tell us about your latest work. Let's dive into some of these very interesting myths. I think you've done a good job outlining these myths. And Garrett, one of the things I always say, it's so amazing to me how people just live their whole life in sort of the wrong financial context, if you will. They're playing by old rules that their parents and grandparents played by, which made sense for them. But the times have changed, haven't they?
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like most people get stuck in this playing not to lose philosophy, which is typically all about like diversification, and they diversify into things they don't know and understand, or they're playing to win, which is usually I'm going to set money aside early, often, and always, and hope that it works out one day, someday. But I believe with the rules of today, you can set it up to win first, then play. And I know in your world, you can buy real estate up front and know that it's a win based upon the comparables, based upon the things you know about it, based upon being a real estate professional for tax purposes and the massive amount of tax advantage that comes along with that, based upon the cash flow that comes, and based upon the leverage of utilizing the money, especially a guy like you that is very knowledgeable in that arena. So I feel like you've learned how to win, then play, and a lot of that is investing in alignment with expertise and really getting focused instead of diversified, because when I'm talking about diversification in a negative light, it's when people get that there's spread thin, they invest in things they know nothing about, they speculate far too often. And so, these old rules of getting good grades, getting a good job, and working for someone, and getting a pension, and having the stock market take care of you in a retirement plan, that's a failed financial experiment in today's rules. Those are antiquated, and it's time to embrace a completely different system.
I love that. One of the quotes that, I have a lot of quotes, and I'm sure you do too, Garrett, that have really impacted my life. And sometimes a good quote just kind of just sums it up, and it's just something you can remember and kind of live by. And I remember Andrew Carnegie, I heard this quote when I was like 18 years old, maybe. He said, put all your eggs in one basket and watch that basket.
Yeah, watch it like a hawk.
Exactly. And so diversification or diversification, it perpetuates wealth, maybe. That's a fair argument, I'd say. It's the
not
playing.
Not a bad place to store wealth.
Yeah. It's like you said, it's the playing not to lose game. But the vast majority of people listening to this need to play to win, because they got to get in the wealth accumulation phase. Most people listening aren't in the preservation phase, right? That's most of the world, and that's why I know it's most of our listeners. And so, absolutely, diversification is a overrated idea. Just learn something, know it, get your eggs in that basket and watch the basket. But the thing I love about income property is you can take the asset class, but you can also still diversify geographically. And that's a beautiful component of it. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. But how many myths did you outline? There are 9 of them, right, in your book?
Yeah, in Killing Sacred Cows, I outlined 9 myths.
Okay.
And before we dive into that, I just want one more comment.
Sure.
So playing not to lose, that's where people diversify, or they just sit in the sidelines. Playing to win might be that they hustle, they work hard, and they do things. I feel like there's some things that you can win first, then play, which is there's 4 main areas. Number 1, if you reclaim money from the IRS because 93% of people tip the government unnecessarily. Number two, you find out where you have inefficient loans, improper structure, utilizing it by improving credit or cash flow reporting or the right connections or even the right collateral so that you pay the institutions less and keep more. And then the third one would be finding where there's hidden fees or commissions within investment structures where it's non-performing. And the fourth one is finding duplicate coverages or costs with insurances. And so what about just finding a windfall of cash flow or money by having simple financial strategy, savvy, and insight so you plug the leaks and then you can reinvest those dollars back into growing more assets? And to me, one of the biggest ways to win first and play is to simply build cash flow first. All this high speculation waiting for 30 years in the markets or getting involved in things that people don't understand, hoping that it's going to pay off, create economic independence first. When you have enough cash flow that comes in from recurring revenue, passive-based income, so to speak, although you still have to monitor it, then when that covers your expenses, you can swing for the fences in what you do. You can go to the next level knowing that you're set on the right financial foundation. And I just think far too many people are just trying to save 10% and earn 10% on that 10%. And it is a slow, antiquated, kind of old rules philosophy that came from our great-grandparents and grandparents and should have gone away with the Depression era. And it's still industrial age thinking that's plaguing us in this information technological age where I just feel like brains win over bronze today. And it's not just about hard work. It's about the right philosophy, because hard work with the wrong philosophy still equals bankruptcy. I've met a lot of people that work so much, so hard, and then their money goes out there, and then they lose money because they didn't know what they were investing in.
Absolutely, yeah. Good points. So what are some of your favorite, or, they're not your favorite maybe, but they're the most pervasive of these 9 myths? We probably don't have time to cover them all, but, pick a couple that you really want to talk about, and let's share them with our audience.
I'll pick 4. One we don't need to spend much time on,
all right,
because you've already covered it so well for your audience. And so one of the myths is avoid debt like the plague. That's a myth. People don't borrow because they're afraid of borrowing. But if you're borrowing $200,000 to buy a $500,000 asset, that's actually $300,000 of equity. But some people feel like, oh, no, that's debt. I've got to avoid that completely. So I think you've really done a good job explaining that. The 3 other myths that I think would merit attention is the one myth is called the finite pie. Another myth is it takes money to make money. And then the final myth would be self-insurance. Those 3 myths, I think, are relatively revolutionary in how I describe it and help people overcome that so that they could be more empowered towards success.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. So the finite pie, that's this sort of old, really, really old thinking that I think is programmed within all of us from really an evolutionary level, the world that human history developed in for forever until just very recently was a very scarce environment. And we haven't evolved to understand that the world is a massively abundant place today, right? Even if you're suffering, right, and you're not doing as well as you want, or there's a recession, or worse yet, a depression, or, you live in a developing country, the world is still a vastly more abundant place than it really ever has been in human history. But yet we still act like, oh, it's scarce. I gotta, get all I can and, beat other people to the punch. And instead of creating and viewing the world as an abundant place, I know that's getting a little maybe metaphysical here, but, I just wanted to bring that down to practical advice too.
I thought you nailed it. That's it right there. I mean, even if there's a finite amount of money, there's an infinite number of times it can exchange hands because of serving others, solving problems, delivering value, and it's dollars that follow that value. So the more times it exchanges, the more wealth there is. And if we look at the Palace of Versailles, I went and visited that in 2011.
That's amazing.
And King Louis lived in the most opulence that you could imagine, 1,000 servants and all this kind of stuff. But the bottom line, Jason, is you and I have some more opulence than even he did. Right. Yeah. And because of the technology and advancements. So I think that the antithesis of the finite pie is that abundance comes through connection, innovation, resourcefulness. Instead of fear, doubt, and worry, it's based upon faith, action, and innovation. And so it's not a win-lose world. We're all winning in today's world compared to hundreds of years ago. And that's going to continue to improve as long as people exchange with one another.
Yeah, I love your example, by the way, because, I took my mastermind group to Newport, Rhode Island, and they said the same thing. These people lived in these beautiful mansions, but guess what? They didn't have an iPhone. It's in a lot of ways, we are much, much richer, even if we don't live in these palaces like that. But it's
more food availability, easier transportation. We can see anywhere in the world for a fraction of the time and money. It goes on.
It's truly amazing. Okay, tell us about another one of the myths.
So another myth is it takes money to make money. I was on a national radio show last week, and the host actually said, well, everyone knows it takes money to make money. I'm like, actually, there's an equation, and financial capital or money is the byproduct. It's the receipt. What it really takes is two other precious forms of resources. The first one being mental capital. It's your knowledge, wisdom, ideas, insights, systems, tools. Like mental capital is a precious resource if you combine that with relationship capital. People, networks, organizations, mentors, customers, clients, friends, family. And so the real equation out in the world is we take our mental capital, and the bridge between that and relationship capital is business or marketing. And that conduit between the two is service, solving problems, and value creation that I mentioned before. So if anyone thinks they have a money problem, it's a mental capital problem, which is your ideas or thinking or mindset, or relationship capital problem, which is who you're spending your time with, and you're either not impacting enough people or more deeply impacting the people you're currently reaching. So you're an idea or relationship away from the next level of value. And so, yes, it may take, in some circumstances, money to invest, but whose money is the first question, and not all investments is a second factor of that. So it's unfortunately a debilitating statement that I think holds people that are poor or in the middle class down because they start to believe that notion rather than recognizing value creation is the key.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that belief system just holds them back. Yeah, great point. Excellent point. You point out the myths, which is awesome. Is there any kind of maybe almost bring it down to like a more tactical level? Like how does someone implement that or overcome that? Or, maybe it's just a belief system and that's the answer. But I just thought I'd throw that one out there for you.
Okay, so if it's a belief system, there's two ways to overcome scarcity. Scarcity is this place where we're in the wrong mindset of, I would call the consumer condition, looking to take more value from the world than we contribute to it. And it's a very selfish state of existence. So the first thing is that people aren't having the results that they want. They can either call a mentor or a peer and discuss their viewpoint or the situation or circumstance, and that other person who's less emotionally tied to it can ask questions we can't ask of ourselves. Or the second thing we could do is, rather than calling to complain to someone, who are the best relationships you have, you call them up or meet with them and find a way to deliver value to them so that they can appreciate you. And the fact that they acknowledge and appreciate you elevates your mindset. Just like when a real estate appreciates and it goes up in value, our mind goes up in value to see it a more abundant view. Mm-hmm. So it's either in serving others or admitting and being open and authentic with someone so they can support us. So that's part of just the mindset. But then there's also the knowledge and the right type of knowledge. Some academics are completely useless. Some are useful depending on the field you go in. But overall, you better be damn good at what you do, and you've got to have the mental capital, because risk, as you know, isn't in the investment, it's in the investor. So what kind of investor are you? What kind of mindset
I love that saying. Garrett, I want to stop you there. Say that again. Risk is not in the investment, it's in the investor. That was a gem. That was good.
I mean, because I look at you, you're a good real estate investor because you've trained yourself. You've developed a skill set. You've invested in it. If someone goes, I'm going to get into some real estate, and they don't go to a course, they don't learn anything about it, they just go out there and make an offer or buy something at market value, they don't know about property management or renters or what things to improve and what things not to worry about or how to inspect it or lease options, or like I could go tons of things, that's going to be a riskier investment for them than it is for you. So that's important on the mental capital side. The second is the relationship capital side. Are we spending time with people that uplift us, that we learn from, that energize us, that are wanting to see us succeed, or do we spend our time with people that are overly dramatic and negative and consume our time and don't want to see us succeed? And I think that people haven't got deliberate enough about that. And you don't have to implode those negative relationships. You just get more selective with the time you spend there and reserve that time for the best relationships. And I think that those are two of the best ways to elevate your wealth: who you choose to spend your time with, what you choose to learn and apply.
I often repeat, and people are probably sick of hearing it, but it's the great Jim Rohn quote of your income will be the average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with. And, this is an unfortunate part of life, and I've done it, most of my life, right? I've made this mistake, is that you just fall into the relationships and friendships that are proximate, that are just there, that are just kind of in front of you, rather than being deliberate about it and saying, look, there's not necessarily any difference in quality. Well, maybe there's a lot of difference in a positive way between, my friend who lives next door or I grew up with my childhood and this person who's, a high achiever. It doesn't mean the high achiever is going to be a lower quality friend. They're probably a better quality friend, right? But, we just sort of don't make, most of us, I think I speak for most people. I mean, I'm certainly speaking for myself, that most of the time we just take what's in front of us and we don't act deliberately about choosing friends that will bring a very positive mindset and influence into our life, right? Well, I mean, would you agree with that, or is that crazy?
Yeah, it's almost like we feel a level of guilt, or we don't know how to say no, or we think that being nice means saying yes to everybody and everything, and we want to see the best in people at times, even if they're in a bad spot. I mean, I think there's just a lot of human nature that goes along with this. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean that, like for me, I used to argue with this guy that I would say exaggerate is a nice way of saying
a liar,
lying all the time.
Right.
And then I would try to change him. I would try to bring him to reason. Yeah. And then I would continue to spend time. And then I just decided one day to step away completely. Right. And my life got better. Yeah. And I said, why don't I reserve that time for the best relationships out there?
Yeah, good point.
And so simple exercises: write down your top 10 relationships, your top 10 worst relationships, and take the time that you're spending with your top 10 worst and add it to your top 10 best and watch your income go up.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. That's excellent advice. Okay, so you said you wanted to do 4 of the myths. I don't think we covered 4, have we?
Covered, we mentioned the avoid debt like the plague.
Yeah, that's a myth.
We did the finite pie. Mm-hmm. We did it takes money to make money. Yeah. And then the final one I mentioned was self-insurance. Okay. Self-insurance is a myth. You're either insured or not insured. Okay. You either transfer risk or retain it. Mm-hmm. And my philosophy is you transfer all catastrophic risk, you retain all inconsequential risk. Inconsequential risk to me is a fender bender in my car, minor damage to my home, minor theft in my home. Like that stuff that I've got the cash to handle, I'm not going to be staying up at night worried about it. Whereas an umbrella policy that could cover me if someone else, hits me and doesn't have insurance, mm-hmm. or if I hit someone else and they're extraordinarily wealthy and that could tap into 50% of my income or any of my unprotected assets, that's a big thing. And part of this, self-insurance is I like to create the right asset protection trusts and corporate structures in addition to using insurance. And when people think that they're not going to need insurance in the future, like they buy life insurance that's going to expire, then one day go, I'll just use my assets. Your assets become prisoners. Your assets become trapped because they have to act as insurance, and you paid at least $1 for mm-hmm. that dollar of insurance, where if you get the right insurance or structure properly, you're going to pay pennies on the dollar to transfer that risk and keep your money freed up to invest how you please, allocate how you please, regardless of liquidity issues. Whereas if that becomes, you pay off your mortgage on your home and you drop your insurance, you better have enough cash on hand to replace that home if something happens. Otherwise, that could be buried somewhere in the back of your head as a seed of scarcity, continually tugging at you, having you avoid things you would have done otherwise that could have been productive. Because I believe that protection is a platform for being more productive because it helps create more abundance. It helps preserve and protect our legacy. And it's the difference between the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts. Rockefellers, 6 generations of passing on wealth, over 150 people living on the trust. The Vanderbilts had more money than the U.S. Treasury, and right now, they don't have heirs receiving money like Anderson Cooper didn't get any money. He's a Vanderbilt, come from Gloria.
Right, yeah, I know that. Yeah.
They didn't have their protection handled. They didn't transfer their risk. They didn't do some of the most basic fundamental things because they believed in opulence and self-insurance. I believe in predictability, transferring risk, and protecting ourselves so that our money can be allocated more effectively.
Okay, so the rule, let's unpack that a little bit. The rule on insurance is, just kind of restate what you said. Is it self-insure? I mean, look at even if you can afford if you can afford to insure the small things, does it really mean that you should, though? I mean, maybe like self-insure them.
Anything inconsequential, you don't insure.
Okay.
You just take care of it yourself. Like for me, high deductibles on my car, no short-term disability, no AFLAC policies to protect against an accident in a bucket or some nonsense. I want only catastrophic protection, the stuff that could be derailing, devastating, or destroy my legacy. I'm protecting that. Anything that I can write a check for and sleep at night not worried about, I don't get insurance on. Mm-hmm. And most people insure the inconsequential and leave the catastrophic exposed. And sure, the catastrophic is less likely to happen, but it's also your less expensive dollars of insurance. The most expensive dollar of insurance you pay for is the first dollar. The least expensive is the last dollar. So a low deductible on your car is much more expensive than high limits of liability. You can trade hundreds of dollars for hundreds of thousands if you design it properly.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. Very good point. Okay, so how does that play in when it comes to, say, life insurance, for example?
Well, life insurance is one of those things where I believe if it's done properly, you can buy net worth instead of have to build it. You can acquire a sum of money that is guaranteed to come in after you die and actually use that certainty to spend more money in your life. Boost your cash flows 20%. Open up the opportunity for exit strategies on real estate through charitable remainder trusts, and the insurance could become collateral for that. Just think that we know we're going to die one day. Why would you insure that temporarily and have it expire so that your assets now have to so-called be there in case you outlive your money, or be there in case interest rates or taxes or inflation doesn't cooperate with you? Even crazier is I see people that do this buy term, invest the difference, and then all of a sudden when they get to a level of success and they're 30 years older, their attorney says, you got to buy some insurance to cover estate tax. Mm-hmm. Oh, great. Let's buy it while my health is worse, or while I'm much older, because of this faulty notion of self-insurance that you aren't going to need it in the future. Look, GE didn't need insurance on their key executives, but they bought it because they knew when the executives would die, the life insurance would come back in tax-free to GE and replace their pension money they paid. Or Walmart started buying insurance on all their employees, and then when they die, it would be tax-free money to Walmart. People don't understand the value of the death benefit because the name of it makes you feel like you have to die to benefit. But the reality is that can actually become a thing that you can utilize or leverage while you're alive, and it's the bigger asset with the insurance policy. That's a bigger conversation, but I write about it a lot in What Would the Rockefellers Do.
Yeah, good. Garrett, is there anything else you want to tell our audience before we wrap it up? Any question I didn't ask you, or just anything in general?
Focus on cash flow. Get to economic independence. Once you're economically independent, if you choose to speculate, that's fine. But if you don't have a business, being a business owner, whether it's a real estate investor and that becomes your business, or you have some type of side hustle, is one of the most distinguished advantages that you can have to accelerate your wealth. It's such an amazing vehicle from a tax perspective, from an upside. So even if you're an employee during the day, find a way to have some type of business so that you can have the additional benefits that comes along with that.
Yeah, definitely have some sort of home-based business or some little side thing just so you can plow a few write-offs into it. And that's a great thing. Garrett, give out your website and tell people where they can find out more.
wealthfactory.com/podcast. I'll contribute Killing Sacred Cows on my dime, what we talked about and What Would the Rockefellers Do. You can just download those right there, get some cool resources, learn more. wealthfactory.com/podcast.
Garrett, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jason.
Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.